Good afternoon. My name is Butch Bateman. Today is August the 16th, 2011, and I'm a board member of the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. And we are honored today to be talking with County Judge Alan B. Sadler about his history, what he remembers from his days as a young man growing up in Conroe and Montgomery County. This is a series of interviews that we're doing to preserve the history of the citizens of Conroe and Montgomery County for the next generation. Judge Sadler, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Glad you're here.
Day 15 of our extreme over 100, 15 days of over 100 temperature we have.
It is.
It is indeed. Okay.
It is hot.
It's been that way. It's going to continue that way, isn't it?
That's right.
It is. Tell us a little bit of your family background. You were born in Conroe?
Yeah, I was born in Conroe in 1948 at the old hospital on 1st Street.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my mother's doctor at the time was out of town, so Dad just decided to go ahead and make the delivery himself.
Oh my gosh.
So my dad delivered me in that old hospital on 1st Street.
That's interesting.
So I guess that was a start.
For those of you that don't know, Judge Sadler's father was a doctor in Conroe. When did they come? When did your father and mother come to Conroe? What's their family background?
Mother and Dad moved to Conroe in 1946
Okay.
after he was discharged from the Army after World War II.
Okay.
He started his first office was in the old Birch Hotel, which, by the way, is where the Montgomery County parking garage is located now,
Right.
across from this building.
Right.
He went from there to the Falvey Holland Clinic. He was there, I think, 2 or 3 years, and then he started his own clinic on Avenue G in Crook Street, and was there. They added on 2 or 3 times there. Then they moved to the quote new Sadler Clinic across from Conroe High School.
Right. Right. On Fraser.
And I think the year was about 1968.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So you're one of how many children?
I have one older brother. My brother's Dean Sadler,
Right.
the third,
The third. That's right.
and I'm the youngest one of the two.
You're the youngest.
That's right.
So when your father and your family was getting started, they moved here from where? After discharge?
Both of my parents were from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
Dad went to the University of Arkansas Medical School
Got his degree.
and was in World War II in Belgium, France, and Germany in a MASH hospital. So he saw quite a bit over there.
I bet he did. I bet he did. And your mother was from when they met there in Arkansas?
Yes, mother was also from Little Rock.
Okay.
And again, they moved here in 1946.
Interesting. So as a young man, having born in Conroe in 1946, you saw the town start out with unpaved streets, the old hospital being what it was.
Well, my brother was...
First memories as a kid, besides riding bicycle around town, what do you recall about the...
Well, my brother was born in 1945. I was born in 1948. We had a great childhood. I grew up on Shady Oak Drive.
Yep.
I remember when Shady Oak Drive was paved from a dirt road to an actual to asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
And we had many, matter of fact, most of the roads in Montgomery County, the county roads, most of them were gravel, iron ore gravel. But yes, I grew up in North Conroe.
Right.
Went to Conroe schools, went to Sam Houston Elementary School, went to Travis Junior High, and then Conroe High School.
And those early schools, were they air conditioned?
Matter of fact, they were not.
That's right.
I had my first air conditioned school when we moved into the new Conroe High School.
That's right.
Out there on Highway 105. I think we moved in 1964 when I was a freshman.
That's correct.
And that was my first experience with an air-conditioned school.
For those citizens that are watching this in the year 2011, we're of a generation that started out not having air conditioning. We were just used to it. We didn't know any
That's right.
difference,
That's right.
and we were climatized to it. But we're glad to be sitting in your office today with air conditioning.
You know, we had fans in our school, in our classrooms.
That's right.
And really, I don't remember any complaints back then.
That's right. There was nothing to complain about.
So, yeah. The heat was a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure was nice to get that air conditioning when we got it.
We started off with window units and then central air conditioning, and
Right.
like you say, in
Right.
1964 we moved to the first air-conditioned school.
Matter of fact, you were there too.
That's right. I was. I wasn't. So was he.
Right.
So was
right.
Sam. So you went through the schools. Conroe was less than 10,000.
Matter of fact, growing up in Montgomery County back then, Conroe was around 8 to 12,000 people in that range
In
growing
the
up.
60s.
The county was 25,000 people. And it was primarily a logging town.
Mm-hmm.
It was an oil town.
That's right.
I remember Dad had quite a few patients out there in the old Humboldt camp.
That's right.
You may remember that.
Yep. I know where it is. Yep.
And I used to go out there with Dad on house calls out to the old Humboldt camp.
Could you explain what a house call is, please?
A house call is when the doctor goes to the patient.
That's right.
And we had a lot of great experiences together
I can imagine. I can imagine.
back then.
Yeah, it doesn't so much happen anymore, unfortunately, but yeah, in the early days, doctors, when you were sick and it was maybe outside of office hours or you were bedridden and couldn't
Exactly.
come, the doctor came to your home, treated you, looked after you.
Uh-huh.
Those are times we'll obviously never see again, probably.
But anyway, the growing up then, it was, frankly, looking back on it, Conroe was a fairly poor town. Very little wealth here. But there were good jobs in the oil field.
That's right.
The employment was the lumber
That's right.
companies. Remember the Roy Willis's lumber company?
Yep, of course.
The jobs were in the oil field and in logging primarily.
That's right.
I remember the first actual corporate relocation was called Sparkler Manufacturing. They actually built filters to filter water or what have you.
That's right.
I think that was probably in about 1962 or 3. And that was a really big deal.
I recall it
That
myself.
we actually had a company moving to Montgomery County.
That's right. Set up a business, employ people.
Yes, something besides the timber and
That's
oil.
right. That's right. That's right.
But even as late as 1970, the population of this county wasn't but 49,000 people.
And today the population is what?
Today we are just short of 1/2 million people.
So from the 60s of 50,000?
Well, really 25, 30,000.
25 to 30. Okay.
Yeah, back in the
And
60s.
now almost 500,000.
Of course, we didn't have the woodlands
That's
back
right.
then. Well, the woodlands didn't start until 1974.
That's right.
So, and that was, I would say, the real start of the growth of the county, of rapid growth, was the woodlands in 1974.
The planning community. So,
Right.
so you and I both graduated. We got through high school.
We did.
We did. We survived bicycle wrecks and chief of police Eddie Steffens and everything that went along with that.
Matter of fact, as you know, I was 2 doors down from where Eddie Steffen. So
So you could really not get away with anything.
I could not get away with a thing. I tried to ride my go-kart on the street,
Yeah.
and I was always stopped by Eddie Steffen
Yeah.
and said,
The gentleman that we're speaking about here was the chief of police when Judge Sadler and I were growing up, and it never failed in our small community that whatever we did, our parents knew about it before we even got home.
absolutely.
Yeah. He would call our mom or our dad, and when we walked in the door, we already were in trouble. That's
Right.
how the small, tight-knit community than it was in the early 60s.
But you ask about childhood. We had a great classic childhood experiences in the neighborhood. I grew up across the street from T.J. Peel's brother, Buzzy Peel, who had a son my age,
Yep.
Lester Peel.
Yep.
And 2 doors down was Kit Gillen,
That's right.
who we all know is a banker here in Conroe today. But we had the classic softball games, football
That's right.
games in
Right-
people's
right there in the
yards,
street, probably.
dirt clod fights. Of course, right down the street, at the end of my street, the city of Conroe ended. Then we had woods
Where the creek is.
where the creek
Where
is.
the creek is.
And I'll never forget, Kenneth Walker was a developer back in those times and started developing Tanglewood, which was a big deal for Conroe because of the new houses and the new growth for Conroe, north of where I lived.
That's right. And the county, the city, the square, how big the city was at that point, they annexed Tanglewood. They probably doubled in size from the 60s to where they are now.
I'm not sure about the population
No,
exactly back
Square
then.
miles of the area.
Probably
Okay.
so.
Yeah, because where we lived, again, the homes were, in the north part of it were all woods, and now it's all population.
But, we all went to the Crichton Theater
That's right.
at 11 o'clock sharp every Saturday, as you probably all of us here in this room went to for the 5 cartoons, the serials, and then 2 or 3 movies.
That's right. Remember what it cost?
I think it cost me, it went from 25 to 35 cents, and I was upset.
That's right. Across the street was the Franklin Theater.
Yes.
Is that right?
Matter of fact, I never went to the Franklin Theater. I knew it was there. I
Yeah.
always went to the Crichton Theater.
That's right. The Crichton, I guess it was probably air conditioned.
Matter of fact, I think it was.
Yeah. That and the hospital, I think, were the early businesses that had air conditioning when you and I were kids.
That's right.
Good. So, as I repeated myself, we finally got out of high school in spite of ourselves. Where did you go from there?
Well, after high school, I went to the University of Texas in Austin and got a degree in finance.
Yeah.
After that, I was in the banking business for 12 years, primarily real estate banking. And that's really where I got my business knowledge, and I call that my business base.
Was that bank here in Conroe?
No, it was downtown Houston.
Downtown Houston. Okay.
I lived in Houston from 72 to 84,
Okay.
where I was a banker in downtown Houston. Moved back up here in 84. Was involved in some real estate development. And after that, I was appointed to a committee that was charged with studying the efficiency of county government. Matter of fact, I was on that committee 2 years.
Yeah.
And I saw that county government was not running the way I wanted it to be run. I saw a lot of inefficiencies. And as green as I was, I jumped in, threw my hat in, and darned if I didn't win.
And you got elected.
So,
And that was now 21 years ago.
matter of fact, I started in 1989 running for county judge. And the election was in 1990. And I've been in office ever since January the 1st, 1991.
Do you ever recall who? Did you have an opponent?
Yes, I had 2 opponents. I ran against Frank Bass,
Okay.
and the incumbent at the time was Al Stahl.
Okay. Interesting. So, and you've been, obviously, seen Conroe in 21 years. It's been fantastic. I
You're
mean,
about the
between
longest
years-
serving county judge, aren't you, Barb? Is it?
Yes, I think I am the longest serving county judge ever from Montgomery County. And something also coincidentally is I grew up next door to Judge Weisinger,
That's right.
who was
He was there for
probably the second longest running county judge in Montgomery County history, back in the 50s and early 60s. So I never knew what Judge Weisinger did. I knew he was a judge, but at least I had exposure to him.
For the sake of our future people who are watching this, would you like to give a little brief explanation what the duties, what does a county judge really do?
Really, the county judge is what they call a constitutional county judge. It was created by the Constitution of the state of Texas. It's evolved over time. At one time, the county judge did judicial and administrative functions. The county judge did all the probate work and ruled on judicial matters, including mental commitments and other issues. Over time, the legislature has changed the office. They created the county court of laws. They handle misdemeanor crimes, divorces,
Yep.
and mental commitments. So really the job today is, I would say, 99% administrative. The county judge presides over Commissioner's Court,
Right.
creates the agenda for the court, and is, in short, the CEO of a large business.
That's right.
Today we have about 1,850 employees.
Good grief. That's quite a lot of growth in 20-something years.
Quite a bit.
That's right.
Quite a bit of growth.
Your staff and the county to take care of the population growth that we've had here in the last 20 years. You've had to do that to keep up with the growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. We forgot to tell you to turn the cell phone.
Forgot that cell phone.
Didn't have those when you first started.
That's right.
That's right.
Matter of fact, it's funny. The first cell phone I had with the county was it was about that tall. You remember those big?
Yeah.
They probably weighed about 4 pounds. But that's what we carried. Another interesting thing about starting county judge. By the way, my first office was in the original courthouse here on the square. We had a computer system that had the old green screens.
Green ticks.
And it was first generation computers that, needless to say, needed updating.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things I did was completely upgrade the automation and the computer system for the county. When we moved into our new building that was due west of the courthouse.
Right.
Excuse me.
Sure, go ahead. Well, in your tenure here, you've seen what can best be described as unprecedented growth over the last 10 or 15 years with the introduction of this super slamming I call Interstate 45. You were around when Lake Conroe was developed and the decision to build this huge airport 26 miles from us in Houston. So how did any good memories of how those things developed that you could look back and go, we did it?
Well, let's talk about I-45. I remember when I-45 opened. I think the year was 1965.
And prior to Interstate 45, how did you get from Houston to Dallas?
You went on Highway 75.
That's right.
And I'll never forget
Fraser Street.
that yeah, Fraser Street was the only way to get from Houston to Dallas.
Right.
And anyway, let's talk about 45. We had 4 lanes of concrete that opened in 1965. The traffic count in 1965 was 6,800 cars per day.
Good grief.
I went to the Texas Department of Transportation to try to get the acceleration of the widening of 45 in 1997. And the exhibit I had was a photograph of I-45 in 1965 and a photograph of I-45 in 1997. Under that was the traffic count in 1965 that was 6,000 plus cars.
Right.
And the traffic count in 1997 that was at that time about 125,000 cars. At that time, the Highway Commission said, look, we agree. This needs to be expanded immediately. Of course, it took them 10 years
To get here, that's
to
right.
finally start the expansion of I-45.
Right.
Luckily, it's under construction today, and we should have I-45 basically 8 lanes from downtown Houston to the county line in Walker County in probably 2.5 years from today.
Well, it's neat. I mean, the county, the population growth, north, it's gone west to some towards Lake Conroe, but we're seeing unprecedented growth to the north part of the county. And that highway obviously is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
What do you remember about Lake Conroe? Was there a lot of doomslayers that were saying, no, we don't need this lake, and why the city of Houston's gonna own it? And
It's really funny. I remember when Lake Conroe was announced, I think it was 1960. There was a big article in the Conroe Courier. We're going to have Lake Conroe soon. Well, that soon ended up being 12 years later, which is fairly normal.
it took that long, huh?
But there were a lot of issues that expanded at the time. Anyway, it opened in 1972. The estimated time to fill up that lake was, they said it would be anywhere between 3 and 7 years, depending on rainfall. If you all remember, we hit the 100-year floodplain, I believe, twice in 1 year, and that lake was full in 1 year.
In 1 year. And that has been another growth machine, a growth indicator for the county.
Well, absolutely. Lake Conroe, though, as we know it today in 2011, is pretty well built out.
Yeah.
Of course, you have some interior lots left. You have a lot of San Houston National Forest that surrounds the lake. But most of Lake Conroe was built out. So the growth around the lake is pretty much done. But on the other hand, you have businesses now continuing to open up around the lake.
That's right.
And it is still one of our biggest, if you look at the total tax bases in various areas, it is still one of the largest tax base areas of the county.
Around the lake.
It is.
Conroe has developed over the years because of the lake and the interstate and the airport. You see it every morning and every day at 5 o'clock. People are going to Houston. People are coming back. They're coming back to Montgomery County.
That's right.
They're coming to here because of the schools and the quality of life and what we have here that unfortunately Harris County is losing part of and will continue to lose.
Yeah. We have a very large commuter population here that have jobs in Houston.
That's right.
Just look at the parking right in the Woodlands. It is a tremendously successful program. I would say about half the Woodlands works in Houston, about half work in Montgomery County.
Do you recall when somebody first came to your office and said, we're going to buy a piece of property on I-45 that belongs to the Grogan family, I believe, and we're going to make a master plan? They said, community, now it's a city. Even though they don't have the title of the city, but they are.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was a banker in my first job out of college when the Woodlands was announced. And one of the first projects I saw, I was in Miami in a training program with First Mortgage Investors. And one of the first projects I saw down there in Miami was a loan package for a project in the Woodlands. So a lot of my first information about the project, about the Woodlands, came from that loan package at First Mortgage Investors.
Interesting.
So
It's been phenomenally, at least in my humble opinion, successful in how they've kept the trees, they've
Yes.
kept the ambiance. People have flocked there.
there's no doubt if you take one thing in Montgomery County as a complete success story, I would have to say the Woodlands has been completely 100% successful in all the things you're talking about. The commercial growth, the residential growth, the quality of life, keeping the trees, that is so important. Luckily, Conroe has gotten on board with that. They now have a tree preservation ordinance that's pretty strong. And hopefully we can maintain the trees we have left along our roadways because of this ordinance.
The future plans that have been announced lately by ExxonMobil, part of that is in Montgomery County, is it?
No, the big Exxon project that we've heard about, by the way, they're going to build 4 million square feet of office space, is in Harris County.
Is it? Okay.
But the overflow
Yeah.
of secondary businesses, many people that will be working in that facility will be living in the Woodlands or Montgomery County.
That's right.
So the overflow of that project will be tremendous for this county,
That's right. That's right. It's
no doubt.
like yourself, growing up as a young man in the '60s, is to look at where we were and what you and your organization and different mayors in Conroe and Montgomery and Cuttingsview have done to preserve the quality of life, to preserve the ambiance of what we have and not lose it. It's just been tremendous.
Matter of fact, if you look at my website, if you want to summarize the goals I have for this county for the remaining part of my term that I'm in office and in past years, is we need to manage this growth, and we need to manage our natural beauty we have in this county. If you look at Harris County and surrounding counties, like Missouri County, Fort Bend County, none of those counties have the beauty and the things we have up here.
They were rice fields.
What you have left in Missouri County are rice fields. What you have in Missouri County, while it's a great county, you have so much of that county is in the floodway and floodplain. So we have, matter of fact, we could talk about this for another hour and a half.
I'm sure you have a couple of presentations you've done.
about
We've talked about the county a little bit. Let's back up a little bit.
All right.
Because besides this building having the name Sadler on it, there are several other buildings in Conroe that have a name Sadler on it. Can you tell us a little bit about the formation of Sadler Clinic? What your dad, what his vision and his partners, what they saw, what they did?
Yes, Dad's vision with Dr. Wilkerson and Dr. Watson was to build a multi-specialty clinic and hospital, and they did that. They started off, it was owned by hospital affiliates.
Right.
They've had probably 5 or 6 names and mergers and so forth since
Sure.
then.
Of course.
But ultimately they ended up being a major multi-specialty clinic in many locations throughout Montgomery County. It's been a great success.
They've been at the forefront of medical technology for a city. As you and I grew up in a small town where you had to go to the medical center. Everybody had to go to Houston.
Exactly.
Now that's not the case.
That's exactly
You
right.
don't have to go to the medical center in Houston anymore. You can get most anything done medically right here in Montgomery County.
You're exactly right. We have some great hospitals to support those doctors also. Memorial Hermann,
That's right.
Conroe Regional, St. Luke's. So we have a great medical infrastructure here in Montgomery County,
That's right.
no doubt.
That's right. Did your dad and his partners, you think they saw, did the vision include what it became?
That's a tough question. Dad always knew this county, with its proximity to Houston,
Yep.
was going to have tremendous growth. And at least back in the 70s and the 80s, they had to literally court and market physicians to come to Conroe, Texas. And they spent many a night taking these guys to dinner, and they tried to court the best doctors coming out of these medical schools around Texas. And they did.
They did. They did. They were able to show the growth potential to be, what are we, 50 miles from downtown?
Exactly.
Is that right? That's right. Okay.
Exactly.
So in your prognosis and your plans, unfortunately, I didn't look at your website. In kind of closing, Judge Sadler, where do you think we'll be 5 years? Where do you think the county, the cities will be in 10 years?
We are about 1.5 million people today. I estimate we will be at 1 million people before you know it. And I'm talking about 10 years or less. One thing, Houston Galveston Area Council has always been low on their projections for Montgomery County. But we have grown at a rate of about 6% per year for the last 20 years.
Interesting.
And another thing we have the capacity for growth. We have about 400 people per square mile. Harris County has about 4,000 people per square mile. So you can see the capacity for growth is there.
That's right. That's right. You've got a lot of capacity out in East County. There's still a lot of rural
Yes.
roads and out between here and the city of Cleveland.
That's right.
In closing, Judge Sadler, for people who may look at this 5, 10, 15 years from now, if you had to do it over again, if you had a direction, a focus to tell a young person who's 20 or 15 years old, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to consider Montgomery County. You know, historically, so many of our youth have gone to school here and left for the big cities for jobs. That is changing. We now have those jobs right here in Montgomery County. The Woodlands, Conroe, and in the future, East County. I would tell these people, get your education, but come back to Montgomery County, because the quality of life here, in all respects, I'm talking about recreation, relatively